Chernobylite. Should you buy it?
Oh, it's even colder than I remember. You've seen one of these.
Welcome to a review of the game Chernobylite, which was initially released on Steam in October of 2019 in early access, but is finally having its full release date on the 28th of July, which will likely be sometime just before this video is uploaded. If this review helps you in any way or you want to see more, leave a like, a comment, or even subscribe. This review will be in a 21:9 aspect ratio to give it that cinematic feel, and also because it's the native resolution of my monitor, which makes it far easier to record. The game is developed and published by the Farm 51, and is a first-person science fiction survival horror game. I was eyeing this game off when it first released in early access, but didn't end up buying it because I was going to wait until it was further along. Then, out of the blue the other day, I was offered a review code for the game. Just a heads up about the fact that I did receive the game for free, but this won't alter my review of it. This review, as per usual, will be split into a number of categories, and as always, we'll start with graphics. I was running the game on an RTX 2080 Super at 3440 by 1440 with the graphics set at Ultra. The developers of this game tout that the wasteland of Chernobyl is hyper-realistic and 3D scanned. And altogether, most objects and locations look pretty great. Everything appears worn, grimy, and old as they should, within an almost abandoned nuclear exclusion zone. The foliage feels dense and thick, and actually allows you to feel hidden whilst amongst the bushes. The textures of some objects can appear to be a little low res when you get close, not always looking as detailed as they probably should. But as long as you're not up running your nose along things, and you're instead moving through the world normally, then the game can actually look pretty spectacular and realistic. Most every character you meet within the game will be wearing a gas mask and either full clothing or a hazmat suit, so it's almost impossible to get a good look at character models, besides in a few story-based sections where you can't get too close. But despite each NPC wearing similar clothing, you can usually tell the difference between them, based on the way they sit or stand and small subtle posture adjustments. Altogether, the world and everything within it fits perfectly together and into the intended setting, really making the look of this game stand out in most situations, with the occasional weak texture here and there. The lighting also adds so much to the game that will be covered in the next category, which is possibly the most important part of a survival horror game: atmosphere and immersion. Two strong comparisons you'll likely notice and possibly hear about if you're watching other reviews are both to the Stalker series and the Metro series, both of which are excellently designed post-apocalyptic survival games that really get your heart racing and put you into the world in as many ways as possible. The game tries to implement these immersive aspects into itself as well, and in most cases it succeeds. Most of the time while you're exploring, either on your way to a mission objective or just collecting resources, the game drags you into the world incredibly well. This includes multiple jump scares and creepy moments that have made me actually jump in real life or sit on the edge of my seat waiting to see what happens. In my mind, this is a sign that a game has immersed me pretty effectively. Having to find scarce resources and use them to craft many things throughout the game also feels well implemented in a way that doesn't take away from the immersion. Radiation levels can be checked with a handheld device instead of a HUD element, which feels great because it means you have to specifically switch to an item instead of your weapon to tell if an area is irradiated. You'll also have to manually enter your inventory to equip your gas mask in order to enter certain areas, and then remember to take it off yourself. Some aspects that do detract, however, involve a decent amount of menu navigation while at home base, HUD elements for both flashlight and gas mask, as well as health and other meters. The enemies also have health bars if you're in combat with them and aiming your gun at them. I will say that whilst actually on a mission, and you're just exploring and in non-combat, then only a very small compass icon and XP icon are at the top by default, mostly clearing the screen of HUD elements. I would have liked to see a physical map that your character pulls out or something similar for other HUD elements, but altogether, the game honestly sucked me into the world pretty well, and I never felt particularly safe or secure until I was back at base. Leading on from that, we have another category that is closely linked to atmosphere and immersion, and that is music, sounds, and voice. Beginning with music.
Shoot to kill! Tango's behind cover, careful!
Almost the whole time you're wandering around and exploring, there is a constant suspenseful music playing, making you always think that there's enemies or something worse around every corner. The music then of course ramps up when entering combat, providing you with that heart-racing feeling. But the true music star is those creepy areas that, despite the fact that there's nothing dangerous in sight, the music playing makes you move as slow and quietly as possible anyway. Then we have sounds.
All work and no play. Let 'em hear it go, boy.
We all know the terrifying click of a Geiger counter by now, if you've played almost any post-apocalyptic style game, but it still gets the blood pumping whenever it happens. Occasionally you'll hear loud thumping footsteps that will scare the shit out of you without knowing where they're coming from or what's causing them, especially towards the early game. I will say that most of the time, it seems pretty impossible to tell where a sound's coming from, and they'll often sound like they're right beside or behind you, despite being 50 meters in front, which can be confusing and a little disorienting. Then something scary happens and a sound is perfectly in sync with it, such as the laughter of a little girl, that can get those goosebumps up and running real quick. Then we have voice.
Active on the radio. They're looking for someone, supposedly a traitor and a thief. I managed to pinpoint the location. It's Kopachi, the village near the Pripyat River.
Let me think. Sasha got arrested. Grisha was shot. Oleg fell to his death. Vova drowned. Aloysia overdosed. Only Evgeny is left.
And I take it that Yevgeny is you?
Evgeny is me. I'm the last man standing.
Professor Kimanuk, I presume. It's an honor to finally meet you in person. We've got a lot of work to do, you and I.
I'm here. What did you want to talk about?
A few days ago, someone took our supplies.
This game is based in Chernobyl, and the game offers both Russian and English voice acting. In most cases with these type of games, the Russian is better, but I played with English voice acting, so I didn't have to always read the subtitles while trying to understand what someone was saying. The voice acting's passable, but it can often sound forced and a little bit fake at times, but I still found myself caring about some of the characters, despite them not fully coming across as genuine most of the time. It can also be quite hard to tell how the voice acting actually sounds, because a lot of it is either over the radio, or the character is wearing a gas mask, so it's muffled in some way or another. Now we move on to what is almost always the largest category of these reviews, and that is gameplay. Is the game actually fun to play? We're going to start off with aspects that I consider good or effective within Chernobylite. Let's start with some difficulty options. The game provides separate adjustment for survival, management, and combat difficulty, all of which affect different things in the game. So if you find the combat is your downfall, you're able to lower the difficulty for that, but keep the rest up high so that you don't lose all of the game challenge. The game is quite stealth focused, allowing you to get more done and have a lot of an easier time if you pick your battles carefully and do what you can to sneak around enemies, either opting to avoid them or stealth take them down. This doesn't mean you can't charge in head first, you'll just have to keep an eye on your ammo and health at all times. Lots of things within this game can be crafted, from crafting machines, traps and gas mask filters whilst out in the field, crafting weapons and armor and attachments to equip to them to increase their stats, all the way to a full-on base customization system in between missions, where you can build beds, crafting stations, TVs, generators, and a ton more to keep your companions happy and healthy between missions. The base building system reminds me quite strongly of a smaller version of the Fallout 4 settlement building system. You'll have to balance rations, comfort, electricity, air purity, radiation protection, and other such things within your base. Speaking of companions, there's a variety of companions you can recruit to your cause, who can be sent out on missions to collect supply drops or resources without you, and who can also teach you specific skills that will make you more effective as you gain skill points. These companions can also become injured, captured, or even die, so you'll have to make sure that they're well equipped for the job. One thing within the game that surprised me was that actions you take or decisions you make throughout your time playing can actually influence the way the world works or future missions. For a brief example with as little spoilers as possible, an early mission resulted in me killing a guy because I didn't trust him. Later on, I was sent on a task to look for a missing person who ended up being the guy I'd killed. Then I was given the choice to lie about killing him or tell the truth, allowing for possible replays of the game to get all the possible endings. You'll come across random NPCs out and about who will often offer trade deals, which usually include either trading food or ammo to them for something you want. I always get a little excited when I come across an NPC because it gives you some brief respite from the exclusion zone. There are plenty of secret spots littered around each area, ranging from hidden underground bunkers full of loot to trapped NPCs that you can choose to free or leave to die. Similar to games like XCOM, you will be provided with various mission options per day that will net you different rewards, varying from food rations or supplies, ammo, or specific story missions, which will help progress the game. The optional missions usually have a time limit of 1 or 2 days, but will often pop up again very soon. The game can be relatively non-linear, allowing you to complete a number of missions in whichever order you see fit. You can travel between each area with a makeshift portal gun that your characters created using Chernobylite. It seems strange at first, but allows for easy travel to and from your base more than anything else. Killing people can result in one of your meters going down. It's not called sanity, but it's similar. You'll have to fix this by consuming certain items or doing things that make you feel normal, so if possible, it definitely comes in handy to avoid combat. Now we'll move on to a few aspects of the game that I don't feel particularly strongly about in either direction. The world in this game is not open world. Instead, it's split into smaller areas that are pretty open, in which you explore and complete a task, then return to base. I think for the type of game, it does work well, but sometimes it feels slightly limiting. And then for some of the factors that I don't love. Resource management and keeping your base healthy and happy can be occasionally a little tedious, as you'll often find yourself having to go on missions to the same area over and over again, just to collect enough food to keep everyone alive. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it can be a little boring. The one redeeming factor to this is that each area seems to be different in some way or another whenever you return there, so it adds some intrigue to each mission. There are quite a few areas that look like your character could easily fit through, such as 2 trees, but result in you getting stuck and instead having to go around, or very small ledges and rocks that your character feels are impossible to get up at times whilst easily climbing them at others. I understand it's a staple in these type of games, but the inventory management can become slightly frustrating if you're on a collection spree, but the base provides locations to store your items, so it only ends up being a very minor hassle. Although I do enjoy the stealth and sneaking aspect at times, it can become a little boring, but I'm prevented from changing up my playstyle because I know I'm much more likely to fail the mission if I do. The combat system is okay, but doesn't step out of the box in any way, and feels as simple as it gets. Aim and shoot. You can lean around corners, which gets points, but nothing feels unique or special about the relatively one-note combat. Moving on from gameplay, we have content. Here we take a look at how long this game will actually take you to complete, depending on how you play it. Seeing as the game is only a very recently released, it's hard to get an accurate reading of how long the game is. According to How Long to Beat, the game can range anywhere from 14 to 17.5 hours, but with the amount of side missions and objectives available, I estimate the game could take anywhere from 15 to 40 hours, give or take. But once the numbers are fully released, I'll give a more accurate figure in the comments below. Now, as mentioned, this game looks pretty spectacular, but because of this fact, how is the performance? As mentioned before, I was running the game on an RTX 2080 Super at a 3440 by 1440 resolution, and at most times the game ran surprisingly well. Despite running on ultra settings, the benchmark test turned back an average of 75 FPS, which I should have up on screen now. At most times, I was probably sitting somewhere around 60, but some areas dropped into the 30s at times. One mission I did was stuck at about 35 FPS for the entire mission, but then returned to normal after that, despite heading to the same location again and not having this problem. Some of the creatures within the game can appear to look like they aren't functioning properly, but once you understand how they're meant to move and act, you'll realize it's actually not a bug. Story is up next, and don't worry, I won't mention anything spoiler related, and anything I do mention will be from the beginning of the game. You play as a voiced protagonist who once worked at Chernobyl. You've returned to try and find your long-lost fiancée who disappeared after the Chernobyl disaster 30 years ago. The story is decent, as it keeps the game moving, providing you with a clear motive, But in my opinion, the true hero of the story aspect is the choices which alter the world and resulting consequences. And finally, we have the overall verdict and experience. The game initially caught my interest back in 2019 because of the immersive look of it and how amazing the graphics looked. After playing it now in 2021, I can happily say that these aspects do not disappoint. The game sucks you in a decent amount and looks sexy while doing so. The world feels real and puts you into the Chernobyl zone. Some aspects take away slightly, and a few elements of the game can get repetitive or monotonous at times, but I'll be honest with you, this game hooked me more than I expected, and I plan on continuing to play it into the future. The game is $43.95 Australian dollars or $30 US, but is 10% off until the 5th of August if you want to pick it up brand new. If everything you've seen looks good, you enjoy games like Metro and Stalker, or you just wanted to confirm your purchase, then I would recommend checking this game out if it's your style. It might not be for everyone, especially if stealth and suspense aren't your thing, but I personally enjoyed it quite a lot, and for a game that isn't even close to full price, I would say it's worth it. Anyway guys, that was my review for Chernobylite. If you guys enjoyed this video at all, or it helped you out in any way, maybe leave a little baby like, or even subscribe for more late reviews and reviews. And catch you later.
Do you have open graves to find girls to fall in love with, Igor?
Do you have to open graves to find girls to fall in love with, Igor?